Hey. All right.
Welcome, everyone, to the Day 2 Tokyo Recap Show. Apologies for the hard noon East Coast start time. We had some technical difficulties from Tokyo, but we made it with a minute to spare. Robert, John, it's 1 a.m. there in Tokyo. Thank you guys for staying up late. Those of us in America appreciate it. And it's sort of interesting because Olympics, there's no off days. We have morning and afternoon sessions, so there's sort of less going on at each session. I think it gives us a little more time to digest things. But do we just go straight there? I mean, I know this is a distance-centered website, but the big story that everyone's got to be talking about today.
Men's discus, of course, right? Sweden 1-2. No, that was the greatest 100 meters anyone's ever seen, right? 10.61. I know it's not the world record, but there are a lot of questions about the world record. I don't think there are the same questions about this race. 10.61, Elaine Thompson, Olympic champion.
It was amazing. And I apologize. Weldon, for some reason, is freaking out, even though it's 12 noon where he is, and it's 1 a.m. here. We started 9 minutes late. I apologize. But the proper introduction was going to be this. Welcome, VIP supporting club members. John actually gets mad. You're the supporters club members.
Supporters club members. I will say that word correctly.
We love you.
The Let'sRun.com supporters club. I just want to give our members thank you, their proper due and respect.
Thank you. Welcome to our midday breakdown from Tokyo. Elaine Thompson-Herah is the fastest woman in the world and maybe of all time. Clayton Murphy's gold medal chances are alive and well. Bryce Hoppel looks like the Hoppel of old. And Ajay Wilson goes home devastated. That's what we're going to be talking about. Also, a little mixed gender crap. Also, a Rojo rant. Rojo rant about Francine and Salvo's disqualification. I'm still very upset about that. I'm not happy about that at all. But let's go to the women's 100 meters, John. It was spectacular, like they did in Doha 2 years ago. They blacked out the stadium. I know there wasn't a crowd, but it was tingling to see it. The anticipation of who was the fastest woman in the world, and it lived up to the hype. The gun goes off, and first of all, actually, before the gun went off, John and I get reprimanded because they're doing like and you saw it, right? The light intro and everything. And I whip out my iPhone to like take a video of it. And they're like, immediately, this Japanese guy's like, no, I don't know how he even saw me. He's like, no, do not take any photos.
He said no photos. I didn't sign up for that when I got my credential. I don't think that's even a rule. I've seen many journalists take photos from the stands in the stadium. Like we're not allowed to take photos, but if there were fans in the stands, they would be allowed to take photos. The policy makes no sense. But anyway, they had a great introduction to this race. It wasn't quite on par with the stadium in Doha. I thought that introduction where they lit up the entire track was even better, but it was still pretty damn good. They lit up the home straightaway with the athlete's name, picture of them. It really got me pumped. Felt like an Olympic final, even without the fans. And then the race goes off, and for 70 meters, it was amazing. Fraser Price gets out slightly in front, then Thompson-Herah and Fraser Price shoulder to shoulder pretty much for the first 70 meters, and at the very end, it is Thompson-Herah who separates herself 10.61, fastest time since Flojo's world record, 10.49 back in 1988. And a lot of people would say, it's the legit world record. That's something we asked Elaine Thompson-Herah's coach after the race, Stephen Francis. We put it to him. I said, do you view this as a legitimate world record? And he said, I think so, especially when you consider this came into a headwind. 0.6 headwind when the world record was set by Florence Griffith-Joyner. Officially, that wind reading was 0.0, but many of the other wind readings that day in other events was a lot bigger than that. Most people think that the wind was suspect. Then you get into Flojo's progression at age 28. A lot of questions about that. This one, you might have questions about the shoes. There is obviously a revolution in the shoe technology underway, but you had a fast track as well. Good weather for sprinting, but I don't think people are going to be looking at this time the way they look at Flojo's 10.49.
Not at all. I think that. So this is the second fastest time ever run, correct?
It is tied. I believe Flojo also ran a 10.61 back in
I think
1988.
there's good reason to consider this a world record. The FloJo 10.49 in the prelims of the USA's was so wind-aided, it should equate to over 10.6. So this is the second tying the world record into a headwind. Yes, I think Stephen Francis has good reason to say this is the world record. And I'm glad, the race ended, the athletes go through the mix zone, and then we debated whether to stay for the post-race press conference. And I did. There's a reason why we spent thousands of dollars to come out here, because we got an exclusive with the coach, Stephen Francis, and we got to ask a few questions. Basically, John and I are the only ones that ask good questions at these press conferences. John, myself, and Jay Holder of the Atlanta Track Club, who's actually working press operations here, were the only three people to get sort of reprimanded by the Jamaican sprinters. They weren't happy with the questions we asked, but we asked the questions that needed to be asked. So we learned a lot by being here in person. It made the trip, honestly, it made the trip worth it. Because nowadays in the day and age where everything is live streamed and you can actually virtually type into the press conference, it's like, do we really need to spend tens of thousands of dollars? And a lot of people aren't doing it anymore, but totally worth it. And
let's share some of the stuff that we learned.
Okay, we will. So first of all, the athletes come out when the race ended. You would have thought that Elaine Thompson-Herah wins. I mean, it pulled the bolt. She pointed at the thing. She was excited. It was great. But you would have thought that Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price was at a funeral. I mean, I'm like, Jamaica just went to a 3, and there was no big celebration. Nobody was jumping on each other. They just were kind of, okay, Jackson and Hera were debating who got second or third. But then once it comes up, it's like, okay, where's the celebration? Why aren't these people hugging? Whatever. There was none of that. So they come into the mix zone, and Shelly-Ann was first. And she answered some questions, and there she was very upbeat. She said, I'm happy with the silver medal, blah, blah, blah. But on the track, she looked devastated. And then Elaine Thompson, the actual champion, comes in behind her. They're standing, 6 or 7 feet apart? And they did not want to look at each other. And it was like no acknowledgement, but I think Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price could sense that Thompson was behind her, and she basically entered the press conferences and wanted to leave. So we were like, what is their relationship like? We wanted to get to that.
Yeah, and someone actually asked them in the press conference, what is your relationship like? And the silence, it was probably only about 8 seconds, but it felt like 8 minutes, Robert. Like, it was just Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price and Elaine Thompson staring into the void. Neither of them said anything. And then finally, Shelly-Ann took the mic and essentially gave a generic answer and said, I respect all my rivals, that sort of thing. She didn't really address the specifics of the question. But it is pretty clear these two trained together from 2012 until 2020 under Stephen Francis. Then Shelly-Ann left I think after the 2019 Worlds, when she won the title, she left and now she's sort of out on her own. It's pretty clear they don't have a great relationship. They want, if you go 1-2 with someone you really like after the Olympic final, you're probably going to be hugging each other and going for a victory lap together. That didn't happen. And that's fine. When you're the two best in the sport, they both want to be number one, right? So I'm not going to say that's a bad thing. I like that the sports have rivalries, but it's clear that they don't have the greatest relationship.
No, they're not friendly at all. And when we asked Stephen Francis privately on our one-on-one exclusive with him, afterwards, we said, what is the relationship? He said, he said, I don't know, or no comment. Or then he said, I don't know. Well, I can't tell you. He basically admitted that he knew, but he didn't want to tell us. So it was good. I thought the way they handled it was perfectly appropriate. I'd actually read an Olympic article before, as we're getting ready for the actual main press conference, we were debating what's happening here. And we said, in this article, Elaine Thompson's younger. She's 4 or 5 years younger. She said, I looked up to them, blah, blah, blah. I think the way they handle is perfectly. They're not friends. I don't know what the backstory is, but they trained together for a long time.
Well, Robert, we've got a comment here from Thunder Juice saying Coach Francis started paying more attention to Elaine and Shelly felt neglected from what I understand. That's actually, we did ask Stephen Francis, why did Shelly-Ann leave the group? And he admitted that, at her age, I think she's won 6 global titles. She is the greatest female sprinter of all time. And I think she kind of felt like she wanted a little bit more individual attention. That's something Stephen Francis said.
So it's amazing.
It's understandable.
Right.
And I think that's why she left.
No, first of all, Stephen Francis is a big, obese guy. There's no way, that's the proper way to describe it. He's a big guy. He's got some sort of breathing device.
Well, there was something hooked into his mask. I don't know why any of this is relevant.
No, because it's just fascinating. This is the guy that coaches the fastest people in the world, many of them. And, he's like, we said he coached her through many of her biggest moments of her career. And we said, why'd you leave? He's like, well, she wanted more individual attention. And he's like, people that need the individual attention in my group don't do well. We treat everybody the same. And I don't really do that. And so he was upfront about it. But I asked him, and I asked Elaine Thompson this question. I said, everyone considers SAFP the greatest female sprinter of all time. But if you go to Telesjobshow, which is the results database website, and you type in head-to-head, this is shocking. And these are training partners for how many years, John?
Well, from 2012 through 2019, so 8 years.
8 years. They've only raced each other at 100 meters, according to Telesjobshow, maybe they missed a race or two, 8 times. But Elaine Thompson wins that 6-2. So I said, Elaine, I asked Elaine point blank, should you be considered the greatest, at least 100-meter sprinter of all time? And Elaine was she did not really say yes. She said, she talked about all the great things that Shelley's done, right, John? She said she didn't act like she didn't say yes or anything like that. But when I asked Stephen Francis this, now admittedly, Stephen Francis would have reason to say Elaine is the greatest sprinter of all time. Shelley Ann has left him. He now coaches Elaine. He's coached her to 2 100-meter Olympic titles. But he said no. There was no doubt. He's like, Shelley Ann has had the second fastest time in history until today. Now it's the third. She's like, she's got the Olympic titles. Plus, she's got a lot more world titles than Elaine Thompson.
She's got 4 world championship titles in the 100 and another one in the 200. Elaine Thompson has 0 world championship titles in any distance.
So I thought it was incredibly classy what he had to say there. And I thought the way they handled their, they're not friends, but they both, even Shelley Ann Fraser-Price said, look, I really respect her as a competitor. They both said that. Now, why did we get yelled at by both these at one point during these conversations? I asked, at one point, Elaine said something like, I thought she said like Omar McLeod. I may be mistaken by this, but I'm pretty sure she said Omar McLeod is like it's like she has her husband that's in her corner and she loves Omar McLeod like a husband/brother. And she's like, he's not here. She basically dedicated raced him. I thought John didn't pick up on this. This is what I thought. So at one point I said, you just talked about someone who's not here, Omar McLeod. Well, Sha'Carri Richardson also isn't here. What do you think she would think about this performance? How would you guys stack up? And again, it was ice in the veins. Immediately, no comment. And we talked to Shara Germano, the reporter, former Wall Street Journal reporter, now with the Financial Times. She said, the same thing happened yesterday. Any mention of Sha'Carri Richardson, both of them immediately went, no comment. Well, and I was like, are they trying to get an appearance fee so they can have a match race? But they don't want to talk about Sha'Carri. It was weird. And then in the main press conference, someone asked you just a generic question of, what do you think about the marijuana positives?
As soon as the word marijuana comes out of his mouth, Shelley Ann goes and cuts it off. She's like, no, sorry, wrong people. And they didn't want to answer that question.
They don't want Sha'Carri Richardson mentioned in the same room as them. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, remember, Sha'Carri Richardson, she's done a little bit to stoke some fire with the Jamaicans. She basically, when Shelley Ann Fraser-Price ran 10.63, she basically took credit for that and said, these people have to step up because I'm here. And then I think a couple of days ago, she tweeted, miss me yet? Right? And I would say as great as Sha'Carri Richardson was this season, she wasn't. I don't think she was going to run 10.6, and she could run 10.6. I don't think she was running 10.60 or faster and beating Elaine Thompson. This is one of the great performances in the history of sprinting. And it's interesting. We also talked to Sean Ingle from The Guardian, and he was like, from what he understood, he thought Dina Asher-Smith, who didn't even make the final tonight, she tore her hamstring a few weeks ago and just clearly was not the same sprinter. He said that from what he had heard, Dina Asher-Smith thought she was in shape to win this race tonight. And again, she beat Shelley Ann Fraser-Price and Sha'Carri Richardson in Gateshead in terrible weather. I think Dina Asher-Smith could have run 10.7 this year, but to run faster than 10.61, you're basically saying if you thought you could win this race, you thought you could have produced the greatest performance in the history of sprinting.
Well, you said Dina Asher-Smith tore her hamstring? Is that what you said?
Yeah, she's had a hamstring tear that she's been nursing for a few weeks. And remember, she had to pull out of the Gateshead Diamond League right before the Olympics. Said it was, nothing. She said it was a precaution, but clearly it was more than that because she didn't look great in the first round. And then in the semis tonight, she just clearly didn't have it. She didn't have the same power.
And she's pulled out of the 200. So that's gone. That's the big news. That is big news. Doesn't make the final in the 100 and is pulled out of the 200 final. A couple of the British journalists are mad. One of them on record is like, I knew she was hurt. A good source told me this. I went to UK Athletics. I said, I heard she's had a hamstring. And they said, no, it's not true. What you're going to report is wrong. Do not report it. And then it comes out that she's actually was hurt. So pretty interesting there.
I mean, can we give a little credit to Jamaica, the country? I mean, we talked about this briefly the other day. They have 3 million people. People, I see some comments in the chat. People can speculate what they want, but they're drug tested just like everybody else. 3 million people. They go 1, 2, 3 in the world's premier event, track and field event.
And
Weldon, the crazy thing about this, okay, so 1, 2, 3 sweep has only been achieved on the women's side at the Olympics 3 times in a track event. 2 of those times is the women's 100 meters with Jamaica. And guess who was present for both of them? Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce. They did it in 2008 with her winning the gold in Beijing. Sharon Simpson and Karen Stewart shared the silver medal. And now, 13 years later, she's again part of that sweep in Tokyo. And her championship record, I mean, this is why she's the GOAT. She has been in all of these finals. She always delivers. This was faster. Her time tonight was faster than any of her Olympic finals before tonight. Faster than she ran in 2008 to win gold. Faster than she ran in 2012. She's been in 9 World Championship or Olympic finals, 8 medals, and 6 of them gold. I mean, that is just, she always gets it done on the biggest stage. That's why she's the GOAT.
Right. Now, a few things. John almost got yelled at by both of these sprinters, the gold and silver medalists. When Elaine Thompson was in the mix zone, she was talking about, she's like 8, she said, how many weeks ago?
She said 2 months ago she didn't think she was going to be in this position.
So we said, what was going on? And I think I may have read this. If you read the Jamaica Gleaner, you would have known. But if not, she said she's implying and there was an injury. So all John said was, what was the injury? And she's like, turns to him and says, were you not listening?
Yeah, she points at her head first.
She's like, were you not listening? The Achilles. I did not hear the word Achilles come out of her mouth. Now she spoke to another set, like the AP gets first call, so she may have told that to them and not us.
Well, and also
or it could have been the accent.
They go through all the TV journalists as well. I'm sure she's mentioned this multiple times, and also she said she's been dealing with this since the 2016 Olympics. This is not a new injury. This is the reason why she didn't medal in 2017 and 2019 because she has not been 100%. It's been nagging and bothering her for years. Probably as a journalist, I should have known this, that the Olympic champion has been dealing with an Achilles injury for the last 5 years, but I didn't. She called me out on it. Whatever. I'm glad she gave us clarification.
So did Robert ask Elaine in front of Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce if she was the greatest, or this was individually?
No, I said in the main press conference.
Wow.
Now, in the main press conference, I did send a text to John because we wanted to play good cop, bad cop. At the very end, I said, John, you need to ask Shelly-Ann because, like, again, when the race ended, it looked like she was at a funeral. Then afterwards, she seemed upbeat. We said, this is a great question. All of their responses were amazing. These people are amazingly well spoken. I love the way they answer questions, by the way. But John said, look, you did not look happy. The race ended. You looked like you were pouting a little bit. But now you're happy. Like, can you explain the difference? And she said, have you ever lost anything in your life? And John's like, yes. She's like, well, that's the way it is. You want to do something. You want to win. You don't execute the way she said you don't execute the way you want to. I don't understand what she's complaining about. She ran great.
Yeah, she felt technically that she didn't.
Oh, she felt she stumbled in like the 3rd or 4th step, she said. But she's never run 10:61. So, maybe she wasn't perfect. Look how close that is at that point.
No, it took one of the greatest performances in history, arguably the greatest, to beat her tonight. She has nothing to be ashamed of.
It was great. She was a competitor. She was in the moment upset. Then she takes a step back and she appreciates it.
Well, and the other thing here is this has proved very difficult for anyone to do. No one has ever won on the women's side the same event 3 times in an Olympic Games. Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, she had a chance in 2016. She got the bronze medal. She had a chance again tonight, probably her last chance, and she got the silver medal. That still remains the white whale. Usain Bolt did it in the 100 and 200. A bunch of men have done it. Al Oda, Carl Lewis did it 4 times each. No one has ever won the same event 3 times in the women's side.
And if you look at that graphic, I mean, they were even at 70 meters, but Elaine Thompson had the better top end speed. I mean, it was one for the ages. Guys, a question about the atmosphere and stuff. On TV, actually, I don't know, for whatever reason, the sound doesn't sound like nobody's not there. it seems pretty good. The athletes are reacting like it's a packed house. Is anyone cheering? It looks like they're pointing up in the crowd at people, but there's like nobody there, right? So like, or are there sort of support staff, 20 people cheering, and that's loud enough? I'm just kind of curious, like what the sound is like, because I don't know. We'll watch NFL games, nobody's there, but I'm kind of curious.
It's not loud. There is like support staff from each team, and that's basically who the athletes will run over to and celebrate with, is like the other athletes from their country or the coaches who have been allowed into the stadium. So Switzerland, when Switzerland had two women make this final, and the Swiss athletes after that, they were going crazy. That was probably the loudest thing I heard all night, was the Swiss celebrating their final.
You do hear the crowd. I guess you don't notice that it's not loud in an absolute sense. It doesn't seem weird. I mean, maybe I've been to a lot of track meets where there's not a big crowd. It doesn't seem weird to me at all. You know?
What was a bummer though is if you run 10.61 in an Olympic final and that time flashes up like Olympic record, normally that's going to generate a shockwave around the Olympic Stadium. It's going to be so loud and so exciting. This is a race that everyone had been hyping up the entire year, and it delivered, and there wasn't anyone except for us media and a few athletes on hand to witness it, and that's just a shame.
Okay, let's talk about what we learned from Stephen Francis, John. This guy's a sprinter. He's very famous, and it was great to run into him. We asked him, it was amazing. Elaine Fraser-Pryce, who just left him last year, again, reiterate, if you're just joining us, he said she's the greatest sprinter of all time. So that was big. We asked him about the 200. And I think he basically expects more of the same, right?
Yeah, he thinks all three of these women are running the 200. I think at this point, I would say Elaine Thompson-Herah has now surpassed Gabby Thomas as a favorite. Beforehand, you might have said, oh, Thomas is a slight favorite because of that 161 at the trials. We asked him about that time. He was just basically like, kind of wanted to see her back it up on the big stage.
It was very interesting. I have to go back and listen to exactly what he said. But I said, what about Gabby Thomas? She's run 21.6. He basically said, I'll wait and see it again. I mean, he didn't quite say what he was thinking, but it was like, I was kind of getting the impression it's like, this is either a one-off anomaly, like I want to see her back it up with a second and third time. This girl had never done anything close to this, or she's doping. I don't know what he thought.
No, I don't think it was the doping. I think he, like many in the sport, that result came out of nowhere, and they just want to see if she can replicate it. Whereas Thompson-Herah and Elaine Fraser-Pryce have won tons of medals on the global stage. They've gotten it done in the championships. Gabby Thomas has never run a global championship in her life.
Now, after the race, people were talking about 2024 Paris and whatnot. And I think at one point, it wasn't totally clear. Shelly-Ann said, no, next year is her last year.
That's what I thought she said.
Yeah.
Because at first she was sort of pushing back. She wasn't sure about Paris. And then she just said, yeah, next year, and then I'm done. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, there wasn't like a big thing, but at one point she said, that's it. 2022 is it. It doesn't make any sense. As good as she's running, you think she'd go another 2 years. Simply just even for the money.
3 years to Paris. All right. Do we have anything else from this 100? I mean, we have a bunch of prelims to talk about. We've got the women's 800 final is set. We have the mixed 4x4 relay with the United States just sneaking out they were in fourth with 200 to go. They sneak out the bronze, but are taken down by Poland, and then of course the athletics powerhouse, the Dominican Republic. How do you beat them? So yeah, that was kind of nuts too.
Yeah, well, let's go back. I guess next up in importance was the women's 800 semis.
Well, any parting thoughts on the 100 before we move on?
No, but let's just do sprints first. We got to do the finals. I don't know. Let's stay there, even though we're a distance website. This 4x4, there's no other. I'm gonna use one word: debacle. As an American, this is unacceptable. Sometimes we're so dominant, I'll kind of root for the underdogs. But like, we sort of viewed this. We were joking yesterday, like, oh, the mixed gender 4x4. Oh, I mean, the Allison Felix gold medal race. We sort of set up it was for her to like put her on just as like, I mean, she's actually running very well this year to get her another gold medal. She doesn't run. They essentially run the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th placers from the trials.
No, 4th and 5th
excuse me.
places
It's mixed gender. Sorry,
yeah.
4th and 5th, both trials, and we get smoked. We get beat by Dominican Republic, and also there's so many more options that we could have run. One, we could have somebody running the Open 400, which has not started yet, come back and run this, and that's what most countries did. Bol from the Netherlands, who's running the hurdle final win, and or semis, she ran the 400.
She did? What she split?
I don't know. She ran a good leg. I'll look it up.
The Netherlands had the lead. That's kind of amazing. So someone who's potentially costing themselves, she's gonna. Well, she probably still get the bronze, but she's a big medal contender, and she's the fourth fastest woman in the 400 hurdles. She runs for the Netherlands. They have the lead with 100 meters to go, and that poor guy got run down by 3 guys. They don't even medal. No wonder he was so upset. I did not realize that. Well, then I don't think you're criticizing the athletes. We can't play it both ways. The media likes to complain no matter what happens, and to me, we've been mocking this race. I've been calling it the Allison Felix gold medal race. So when she doesn't show up, I'm like, wow, this is actually great. This is more like she's actually not just because I think she gets too much praise for being the most decorated gold medalist because so many of it's just being an American. She's on the 4x1s and 4x4s, and you always are going to get a medal for doing that. But then she doesn't run this, and then I'm like, what am I going to expect her to complain now that she's selfish and going for her individual gold or individual medal? You can't play it both ways.
But what is the coaching staff thinking? Shamir Little, I think, has the number 2 time in the U.S. this year in the 400 meters. She did not make the team in the 400 meter hurdles. She is open. She is available for selection. They do not put her on. Instead, they put the 4th and 5th place in the 400 hurdles. That's unacceptable. And I'm sure, I want to know from the coaching staff, did they ask anyone in the individual 400 if they wanted to run this?
They should have, because the point, this is an interesting point. In the 4x4 relay, the women's 4x4 relay, 3 of the 4 legs may not even be individual 400 meter runners, because if you put in a Thing Mo and you put in Talil Muhammad and Sydney McLaughlin, I think all 3 of those deserve to be on the 4x4, and then you would have at least 2 of your 3 individual 400 runners not running the finals of a relay. You could have asked them to run this race. We don't know how it shook out. But look, here's my fundamental problem with this event is the Olympics should be about the best of the best. And everyone could tell going in, this is not how people are going to be treating this event. I mean, where were the Bahamas with Shawnee Miller-Weber and Stephen Gardner? You think they would have a good team. They don't have a team in this final. Like, the United States, should we really be handing out gold medals for someone who can beat the United States C or D team in a relay?
I agree with you, John. I agree. Well, this is true, though. We need to put in a request to USATF. John, send the email tonight. Did they ask? I mean, for all we know, Shamir Little turned it down. I don't know if she did or didn't. She needs to have been asked. Do they ask the individual people, yes or no? I'm not saying she turned it down. Well, we don't know.
Turned it down? She's not even at the Olympics. You're telling me she wouldn't come to the Olympics? Robert, that's idiotic.
No, Weldon. We don't know.
You want to bet $1,000 straight up?
Sha'Carri didn't seem interested in running.
I'll give you 5-1 odds. I pay you $1,000. You pay me $200.
We just need to find the.
Anyone in the chat box? You have 10 seconds to accept the bet.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they did approach the 400 runners, the open 400, and they just said, no, I'd rather focus on the open 400.
Okay, the 10 seconds is up.
I don't blame them for that.
Is there any money like in their Nike contract for winning some obscure relay? I don't know about that, which is interesting. So I agree with you. It should be about the best of the best, and it's not. And are there any swimming fans listening to this podcast live? Like, is there any swimming relay that occurs before the individual events?
Yes, a bunch.
Yes, they've been having them the whole time. So, okay, there's somebody in the chat comment saying Akili Mahele. They can't ask because Little did not make the team. That's not true. The United States, and it says very clearly in their selection team, can select 2 people who are not in an individual event for the relays. So the option was there to pick Shamir Little. There's no rule that says you have to pick people from the 400 hurdles. I think he should have considered it. So that's disappointing. But let's say she couldn't be selected. I still think you try to get one person in the open 400 there. I'd love to see the splits from each one. So I don't know. It's just a bit disappointing. Like, to get beat by the Dominican Republic. Great job to those guys and girls. So
yeah, look, congrats to Poland. Poland, I love what Poland does with track and field. You wouldn't think they would be a world power, but they host a lot of events. They take it seriously. They set a great world record a few years ago at the World Indoors. They beat USA. I don't know if you guys remember that. That was fun. But they've got some great athletes. Credit to them for taking it seriously and winning the race.
Wasn't the time like 3:10?
3:09.
That doesn't make any sense. So that's 2:47.5s and 2:52.5s. It's absolutely terrible. Someone do the math. 2:47.5s and 2:52.5s. I mean, that's like embarrassing bad. Do you think a college team could do that? Anyways, let's don't talk about this mixed gender relay anymore. I mean, we didn't really like the event to begin with, and I think this proves why. Should we really be blaming the Americans for not running it, or blaming World Athletics or some woke person for putting this in the event in the first place? If you're going to have it, people need to treat it seriously, or don't have it at all. Because
Poland treated it. The other countries, what do you mean treated it seriously? I guess Bahamas is one.
Bahamas didn't. Well, then, yeah, of course you are. If you're from some tiny country and this is your one shot, of course you're going to go for it.
Bahamas probably thinks they'll get beat by the U.S. They don't want to go get like a silver because I don't know who their third and fourth runners would be.
Also, if you are as good as Stephen Gardner and Shawnee Miller-Weibo, you don't want to run this event before your main event. Like, you just don't want to be focusing on that when both of them could potentially be. They're both entered in the 200 and 400 at the Olympics. They don't want to throw the relay on top of that. And plus, they got the regular 4x4.
And nobody's going to remember in 20 years who won the mixed gender relay in 2021. Yeah. So, but let's get to the other action. It's really the 800 semis for the women and the 800 first round for the men. 800 semis for the women. Big news, Ajay Wilson is out. Nakai, the Ugandan world champion, is also out. And I don't know which one of those. Neither one of those is a total shock for me. And Nakai was only 7th in the Monaco Diamond League, although she did PR there. But her PR is only 158. I mean, she was one of the most unlikely world champions in 2019, if not the most unlikely champion. Now, it was very unlikely that she finished last in her heat like she did today.
Well, she did. Did you watch her in the prelims? She didn't look good in that, so I'm not really surprised.
But again, why are we here? This made it worthwhile for me. I was the only. It's kind of sad actually because there aren't that many media members here, and like nobody talked to her. Zero. Not one person asked the reigning world champion who doesn't make the final. I was the only person to talk to her, and it was great. She revealed that she has an injury. She pointed down to her leg and said, "They always say tendon in Africa. I had a tendon injury. I think it's probably Achilles tendon, but she said, God willing, she's confident as long as she's still breathing. In 2022, she'll be back and better than ever." So she's got very good English. She was upbeat about it. So that's the inside scoop for the Let's Run people. And
we've got a few people here noting that Rosemary Almanza, who won a Diamond League early this year, ran 156, also did not make the final. I mean, I'm not really surprised by that at all, though. This 156 came out of nowhere this year, and she never has a track record of. Has she ever made any championship final ever? I don't think so. So, that she didn't get it done on the big stage in Tokyo, that doesn't shock me at all.
No, but in terms of like she was the world number 2, so I guess we should point out. But yeah, I mean, John told me in the prediction contest, he's like, "Don't pick her; she never does anything," and I'm pretty confident she's never made a world's final.
And what? All right,
wait, guys, did you guys hear Morgan Pearson? I believe he's an Olympic medalist now.
He did
10-man elite.
Mixed gender relay. They have a mixed gender relay in triathlon as well. He got the silver there.
So this guy right here, Dennis 15. Dennis 15. I think actually mixed gender triathlon relay was on NBC. You guys don't understand how hard it is to watch this track and field in the United States. People chime in the chat box. Every morning you have to wake up. People are enjoying we have a link to the streaming and we have a link to the TV. So if you're just somehow discovering the show on YouTube, go to letsrun.com. There's a little guide every day, but like the stations change every day. The A announcing crew is only on NBC, which is at night. It's crazy. Like you think you go to the Peacock app, you think they would have watch track and field. No, it's on something called Tokyo Live. I mean, NBC's, if you want to wonder why your ratings aren't good, it's hard to find what you want to watch. So Dennis 15, like, how'd you even know the triathlon? I think it was on NBC only because I was switching channels. But the other thing that happened is everybody in back to this mixed gender thing real quickly. Everybody went man, woman. Everybody went man, woman, woman, man, right?
You have to do that?
No, you don't.
We didn't think so. Yeah.
And so with the swimming yesterday, it was pretty interesting. The swimming does, it's an individual medley relay, but mixed gender. So I think people they still have to do the order of events. Like, I don't know what's first, like the, I don't know.
Cares? Doesn't matter.
The breaststroke or something. You still have to do that order of events, but you can switch men and women, whatever. So the U.S. went with a man last on the freestyle. They switched it up, and most countries didn't. I'm sure there's some scientific way to figure it out. The U.S. didn't even medal, so I think they did it wrong. But
Morgan
I think when the men are racing the women, I almost feel like, but I think you'd rather get ahead. They had a random draw to make you just to really make it totally chaotic, because the mixed gender thing looks best when some man's running down a woman, that sort of thing.
I agree. They should make him alternate. But you guys are talking about Morgan Pearson's silver medal. That's disrespectful. I spent 10 years of my life in support of the Cornell Big Red. Taylor Knibb, Cornell runner, Cornell triathlete, also has a silver medal, and she's a better triathlete, I think, than Morgan Pearson.
All right, forget this mixed gender crap. We're talking about the women's 800 meters here. We have a 19-year-old American who is now the heavy favorite for the Olympic gold medal. I mean, you guys watched the thing, Mo, tonight. She ran 158 from the front. She looked like she was jogging. Total control, wire to wire. How does this woman lose? Because I don't see it.
I don't see it either, but we didn't see Ajay Wilson winning and losing in 2019 either. I was going back and reading our previews for 2019, and it was like, this is her race to win. She's expected to dominate, and she didn't do it. And we can't take it for granted, because when they do it for granted, you're like, of course that was going to happen. Well, we thought Raven Rogers was going to kick some ass today, and she didn't. She barely made it into the final. She scrapes into the final by 0.10. But yes, there's been not a dent in the armor of Athing-Mu at all. By the way, did they pronounce her name properly today? I
asked her. She said she didn't hear it this time. She doesn't know.
So
I trust Jeff Whiteman to have gotten it right this time.
But she was amazing. I mean, the other runners now, it's amazing. Like talking to them, they're like, I was talking to Natoya Gold, who, by the way, from Jamaica, was spectacular in Heat 1. Natoya Gold used to be just like a front runner that would go out kind of like a Isaiah Jewett and just hang on for the last 200. And then today, you rarely see this at women's 800 running. They go out, nobody wants to run fast. Everyone wanted to be up front, but it's tactical. And they were like 61 for the first lap. The goal is just leading it. And then she just negative splitted it and ran 58.00 for the last lap. Now, I incorrectly told her after the race, I said, you ran 57.7 or 57.8. I was off by a little bit. When I did, she's like, no way. Can't believe it. She was so excited. But I'm like, is this a sign of your endurance improving? She's like, yes. I think her PR was like 417 in the 1500. Now it's down to 407. She's feeling good. But I said, Natoya, what do you want in the final? She's like, I want it to be fast as possible. That's the Nigel Amos also wants in the final. But the difference is, in the women's final, I'm pretty confident it's going to be fast. I mean, John said it to me the best. Athing looked like she was jogging when she ran, 57 for the first lap today? Was it 58?
57.9.
So I'm like, that's fast for most of these women. That's all they want. Natoya wants an honest race. I think that Athing's going to win the gold. There's a number of women that could medal after that. I'm not going to discount Raven Rogers. Remember, Isaiah Jewett on the men's side looked terrible at NCAAs in the first round and then was spectacular in the final. I'm not sure what happened to Raven Rogers. I was shocked by her subpar performance, but all that matters is she lived to see another day.
I honestly think if you look at the 8 women on this start list for the final, I think any of them can medal. I think with Mo, I don't think any of them can win. But you've got Athing-Mu, Habitam Alemu from Ethiopia, 156 woman. Alex Bell from the UK. All right, this is kind of the craziest story because she was only 5th at the UK Championships. She wasn't even on the team until Laura Muir decided, I'm only going to run the 1500 in Tokyo. That puts Bell on the team.
Wouldn't that put her 4th? Who was 4th?
I'm guessing 4th maybe didn't have the standard. I got to look at the results from the trials. But anyway, she's on the team, and she makes the most of it. She runs 158.8. Her PR is 158.3 in a mixed gender race from earlier this month. She's in the final now, as are the other 2 Brits, Gemma Reekie and 19-year-old Keely Hodgkinson. So Great Britain gets all 3 women into the final. And then rounding out that field, you've got Rogers, who has medaled in the past. And then you've got Gould, and you have Chunyu Wang of China. Now, that is the surprise to me because she looked great in winning. Actually, she didn't win her heat. She got outkicked at the line, I guess. She was in heat 3. Hodgkinson came up on her. But she dominated most of that race until Hodgkinson got her. I've never heard of her. Robert, do you get anything from her? I saw you standing near her in the mix zone.
John's up there like a fat cat in the corporate skybox, like watching the stuff. I'm down in when is the CEO of the company like down in the bowels of the stadium, like watching on a video board? Like, I don't watch these races live because I want to get the one exclusive. I'm the only one that I'm like, who is this Wang woman? So I try to interview her. She doesn't want to speak to me in English. She goes over to the Chinese press area, and like they say no cheering in the press box. Don't tell that the Chinese. There's like a massive applause for her. And then all of a sudden, I guess the stereotype is that like, the Chinese are very serious. They don't joke around. I hear all this laughter. She's got the entire press corps laughing and whatever. And then finally I get an interpreter to sort of come. They agree to let me talk to her if I have an interpreter. So she was great. She's got a great personality. This woman actually won the world youth silver medal behind Ajay Wilson. So she's like, I've been at this level. She's won a couple Asian Games titles, but she's only broken 2 flat 4 times in her life. A lot of seasonal bests of like 202, 203. But she's kind of tall. She's like, I feel like I've always had talent, but it's a big surprise for me. But the reason I said, well, why was the press corps laughing like that? She's like, well, she said to motivate herself, she said if she made the final, she would buy herself an expensive handbag and get her nails extensive. They apparently have a nail salon, John. Did you know this in the Olympic Village?
Yes, I heard.
She's going to get her nails elaborately done. And then the Chinese said, of course, she's not actually going to buy the bag. That was just a joke. But she is going to probably get the nails done. So look out for her nails. But it's kind of a cool story.
This is the poor man's McLuffy. I'm looking. When else has she broken 2? She did it in 2016 at the Olympics to make the semifinals in Rio.
And 2019 when she made the semis, right? She's made the semis twice at this level. So it's amazing how you can be one of the 24 best people in the world and nobody pays any attention to you.
She didn't do it in 2019.
Or she's made it. I think she's made the semis twice somewhere else, maybe a Worlds.
Well, she's in the final now, and if you're in the final, you have a shot at a medal.
Yeah. Point of order. She's not medaling. Raven Rogers, you guys are selling her a bit short. She was 0.16 from winning her heat, but
she's also 0.10 from missing the final. So
fair enough. But I think we know Raven Rogers' upside is much higher than Chun Yu Wing. So I just don't think someone who's never shown in her life that she can break 159 is going to medal in this final.
Well, Halima Nakai, we never thought she could do anything, and she won the final in 2019.
Fair enough. And same thing with Alexander Bell. But everyone else, you got to like their chances. I think Mo is, heavy favorite. And they let her run. It's like she's the alpha. They just this time she said to Lewis Johnson on the broadcast after, hey, you ran in front this time. She's like, well, the semis, it's a little more important. You got to kind of assert yourself. And she may be 19 years old, but she doesn't seem to be showing any pressure. She said she kind of likes the fact that there's no fans. It's probably more like a college meet at Texas A&M. And I mean, it can be amazing. I was debating today, and I'll say this on the podcast. Over under for gold medals for her. Oh my gosh. She could have the most individual gold by the time this is said and done. I wonder what the record is now. I don't know. Everyone talks about Allison Felix, but I think she only has one individual gold medal in her life at the Olympics.
That's correct.
I think, do we know what the record is, John? Do you know offhand?
Oh, individual goals on the women's track and field?
Yeah, for the women, U.S.
Well, only one woman. No one's won the same event 3 times. I think it's like 3 or 4 lifetime in an individual event. I think Mo, yeah, she hasn't won any yet, but with the Olympics in 2024 and 2028 coming right in her prime, yeah, that's certainly a possibility. I guess. All right, question for you, Rojo. Put on your coaching hat. You're Thing Mo's coach, Milton Mallard. How do you tell her to run the final?
To do exactly what she did today. It was perfect. 57, run another 57. You don't want to go out super fast. There's no reason to try to run an Olympic record. But you want an honest pace, stay out of trouble. Everyone is going to let her just drive at this race. I mean, people are going to bow down to her.
But you shouldn't. That's the thing. You get in her grill. Don't let her either take it out really fast or get in her way. Try and mess with her.
No, John.
Give her room to run.
Damn wrong. No. If I'm coaching somebody else, I'm just basically letting her get the gold medal, and I just want it to be a test of fitness. No one's good enough to stop a Thing Mo from winning. I think everyone else, who else in this field is thinking, oh, if I don't win a gold medal, it's a disappointment. There's no one in that field. Maybe Raven Rogers. No.
Maybe Riki, but Riki didn't win the British champs either. I mean,
back to that thing in my golds, I was like, wow, she could have 5. I started giving her double golds next time, the time after. She may get 0, but I mean, her talent is amazing. She's got great personality. I think she could be, let's let her win 1 Olympic gold first, but she could be the face of U.S. track and field for quite a while.
Yeah.
This Linda Wallace in the Facebook chat is asking, how do I watch replays of the coverage? I guess we should put links to it on there. We'll start putting links to replays on the Let's Run coverage because I take down the schedule after it airs. But if you click on the stream link, you can at least find it there. And if you go to the stream link on your browser on a desktop, they actually have a little slider and you can click on like men's 100, women's 800, that sort of thing. So that is helpful, but that's a point I guess we need to do. It's like, here's how to watch the replays. If you go to the big schedule on letsrun.com right now, there's like a big schedule link. Click there on that spreadsheet. If you then find the streaming links should have the thing. Or just Google like NBC Olympics track and field, and they have some of the stuff there. But
so they can get the streaming. Just go to the homepage of letsrun.com and click on streaming. It's got a link to all the TV streaming.
Yeah, but I took it down off the homepage after it airs, so we'll make sure that the replay links are there.
Streaming link at the top.
All right.
Fair
Should
enough,
we get back
fair
to
enough.
some track talk here? Men's 800. We also had the first round of that this morning. I thought it was a very good sign for Clayton Murphy. That was the thing that stood out to me was Murphy looked good and he sounded good in the mix zone. He was very confident with where he's at right now. Now, looked good. He was kind of boxed in for a while. He was sitting in there.
Look, John, stop. John talks about stop talking about the box.
This is a fact, Robert. He was boxed in. I'm not saying this was a disaster. He was fine. He found room to run. He said, I hope that room normally opens up in a first round race when you're as good as Clayton Murphy is. But it's just a fact. He was boxed in. And then finally he frees himself with a little effort with 100 to go. And with 100 to go, he looked exactly like he did in the semis and the final of the trials. He looked terrific. And I spoke to him in the mix zone after the race. And I asked him about his races in Europe. He said, because they didn't go all that great. Right. And he said he's been training. He basically feels like his training is the best when he's racing. He thinks that's the way he races his way into shape. And he was very happy. He's like, how much stock do you put in those results? He's put 0 stock, but he's very confident right now.
Look, the story of the day for the men's 800 from the Americans' perspective, and I told John we probably should talk more about the Brits. We've got a lot of British VIP subscribers. And folks, if you're loving this talk, go to letsrun.com/subscribe. Come on. You spend $10 at Popeyes today, fast food. Support independent journalism. Become a VIP now, because otherwise this shows up in your podcast feed. You can watch on demand. Otherwise, you got to be lucky when we go live at 1 a.m. in Tokyo. But the story of the day was Clayton Murphy. I thought all along all summer, I'm like, look, he was terrible before the U.S. trials. And the U.S. trials, he was amazing. I'm like, if he runs like that, a 143 low negative split race, there's hardly anybody in the world that can beat him. He's definitely going to medal. Maybe Amos can beat him. Maybe 1 or 2 guys can beat him, but he's going to medal. But then he goes to Europe and he runs terrible. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I saw this Instagram post where in Monaco, he did a workout the day after the race. I'm like, maybe he's training through. And that's what he told you. I thought what he said to you, John, was brilliant. He's like, look, I was injured. I missed a week before USA's. Then I had a rehab for a week. And then he admitted, he's like, look, there's a financial reason to go to Europe. He's like, that was the side point, but that was not the main reason. He's like, what's the best way for me to get in ready to race fast? He's like, I need workouts. But he's like, when I do 800 workouts, there's a lot of volume in 800 workouts, and it can often lead to injury. I feel like a race is just the best. John Kellogg and I always say it when we're coaching people, the best workout is often a race. He's like, I didn't want to run a 146 in the US. So he goes over to Europe and runs a bunch of 144s and 145s, but totally training through, just using those as workouts, making a little cash on the side as bonus. And he looked amazing today. Absolutely amazing. It's weird coming off that turn with 150 to go. He's been in perfect position all these races in Europe, but he hasn't had the 150. So I'm like, oh my God, is he going to not have it? And with 150 to go, Raven Rogers didn't really have it today. She didn't look great, but Clayton did. He had it. And I was like, oh my God, that guy can win the gold.
Absolutely. Now can we talk about the other American, Bryce Hoppel? He's another guy who that was the best Bryce Hoppel has looked all year long.
By far. And he said the same thing. He said, look, I've been injured and I've had a turn. All of a sudden it's gone away.
He had a quad injury, which caused him to withdraw from the Adidas Boost Boston games back in June. He said he had to fight through it at the trials. And it was preventing him from lifting his leg when he was running. And when you're running like that, you're running compromised. No wonder you can't run that well. He had a couple European races. They weren't all that impressive. But then tonight, he basically just gets out in second place, stays there the whole time. He looked pretty smooth and relaxed. And this is a guy, remember, he was 4th in the world in 2019. He was the number 2 guy in Monaco last year, 143.3 behind Brazier. I mean, this is a guy who absolutely can get to the final and possibly medal if he's at his best. So I was very confident. I thought it was a great race for him.
Right. And some Weldon's put up on those you watch in the video live chat saying, someone started a message board thread saying, let's run American men, writes a piece saying, let's run American men advance to 800 and look good doing it. But Hoppel and Jewett did not look good. That's not true. Hoppel looked great. The best he's looked, I've seen him all year. He was fantastic and he looked good. He sounded confident. You don't run well if you're injured. He's confident. He's fourth in the world. This guy's tough as hell. So the fact that he was able to make the team being injured is good sign. Look, when you pull out of your main sponsor's meet, you know something's wrong. He didn't run the Adidas Boost games. Something was wrong. He still made the team. He's on the upswing. Discount him at your peril. Do I think he's going to medal? No, but he could. As for Jewett, yeah, Jewett's last 150 didn't look good, but he ran his balls out for the first 600 meters. It was so fast. That heat had the fastest non-final time in the history of the Olympics or World Championships. So it was fast as hell. 143?
143.75 for Rotich. Then Peter Boll, 144.13, Australian record. Elliot Giles was third in 144.49. Then the Moroccan Abdelati El Goose, 144.84 personal best. And Jewett was fifth in 145.07. But guess what? That's how you got to run. If you're not the best guy in the field, you make it fast, you get that time qualifying. He did his job.
It's the third best time of his life. It was a great run for him. Did he look amazing? No. But he looked a hell of a lot better today than he did in the first round of the NCAAs when he ran like 147 or 148 and barely made the final. So,
all right. We've been talking for a while. Weldon, unload your takes. It looks like you had something to say.
I'm just saying I had to make a correction to the homepage because I feel like a guy who, I mean, it was a very fast run, but he didn't look good. When you fade and have to like get out on the final on time, you're not looking good. Hoppel looked better than he had, but he wasn't like automatic top three. Clayton Murphy looked great. So it's a little bit relative, a little bit of, sort of
right.
like this guy, Scott Dance is saying in the comments right now, Hoppel looked to be at his limit though. And I
don't know about that. I thought he looked pretty in control.
I do too. Hoppel always, that guy can dig deep, dude. So he may have looked tired for the average run. I thought he was in control. Jewett, on the other hand, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and that's on me. I wrote that headline initially, so maybe I was a little, Jewett, I'll admit, didn't look great, but he did what he needs to do. I think that's a good result for him. And we also got a question here from Next Day. If Bryce Hoppel was injured, why did he want to go to Europe? Well, he admitted he's kind of just stubborn. His coach and his agent were telling him, like, you shouldn't be racing. You don't need to do this. And Bryce Hoppel loves to race. He wanted to go out there and race, even though he wasn't 100%. Remember, he was racing on an injury at the trials and made the team. So I think he wanted to go out there, keep racing, and doesn't seem to have made anything worse. And then magically, his injury got better a few weeks ago.
All right. It's almost 2 in the. It is 2, actually. It's almost 2 in the morning. No, it's past 2 in the morning here. John and I got to go to bed soon. Let's talk about tomorrow. I guess that you guys have 2 days, but for tomorrow it's 1 day. But in the evening, for you guys and gals in America, the women's steeplechase. Amanda McCoburn's going to begin in the 400 get underway. The women's shot put final. We also have the women's, and then in the evening, which will be in the morning for you guys, we have the women's 100 hurdles, the men's 800 semis, men's 400 semis, and the men's 100 final.
We need to talk about the men's 100 prelims real quick. I know it's late, Robert, but when the Olympic favorite needs a time qualifier to get out of the first round of the Olympics, I'm shocked that we've been almost an hour on this podcast. I mean, Trayvon Bromell is in trouble.
I'm putting it up on the screen right now. I thought, maybe he cruised in getting fourth. No, he was beat off the line. He didn't get a good start. He then kind of ran a little bit, never got close to the leaders, and then some other like British guy passed him right before the end. He wasn't an auto qualifier out of lane one. Now,
round one.
Round one. Now, he skipped the mix zone apparently, but I guess he told one of the AP reporters or somebody on Twitter, and we have this tweet in our recap, it'll be up shortly, that, hey, my coach is going to be on me. I didn't run as hard as I should have. But huge question marks. And the finals less than 24 hours from now. And we won't know. Essentially, you got to wake up and watch the semis to know. I mean, like, if he runs like that again, anything like that, he won't be in the final. So I don't know. I guess maybe this was an aberration. And he sneaks into and he runs great tomorrow and crushes the final. But he was poor in his last race out before the Olympics, correct?
No, he won in Gateshead, and he was poor in Monaco, but that was because he had a stumble early on. This race didn't seem to have any explanation. We don't know of any injury. Again, he didn't stop to talk to Robert in the mix zone. But like normally, I've watched a lot of prelims in the 100 meters in the Olympics, and normally the very best guys, even if they don't get a good start, even if they're only in the middle of the pack midway through, they will separate late. Bromell seemed like he was struggling to do that, and I just have a hard time believing a guy who needed a time qualifier just to get to the semis is somehow going to be able to win the Olympic final. I mean, to me, Ronnie Baker is now, I would say Ronnie Baker is the favorite, and then guess who has come together, as he always does at the championships? Andre DeGrasse, 991. He looked terrific, 100th of a second off of his personal best. He is the silver medalist from the World Championships. Bronze medalist from the World Championships in 2019, bronze medalist in Rio in 2016. He looks well positioned to get another medal this time in 2021, and it might even be the gold.
I'm not sure about that. He's usually good for bronze, I feel like. And also, this track is super fast. So am I going to put too much stock in the times? I feel like this track is super fast. Look what we saw in the women's. Look how fast all the times were in the men's first round. That's crazy. Real quickly, let's give people – it's kind of hard in the U.S. because we're off from you guys. But by the time we do this show again tomorrow, we're going to have the 100-meter finals. We're going to have the 800-meter semis and the steeple first round. Nothing really should happen in the steeple first round. The top people are so much better. Shouldn't be any surprises there. But just 2 seconds on these 800 semis. The heat sheets are out. I think they're actually pretty good draws for the Americans. Heat 1, you got Bryce Hoppel, and there's really no the only other big name in there is Emmanuel Carrera, I feel like. So that's about as good of a draw he could get.
Well, okay, I guess big name, that's true. I mean, Olympic 800 semifinals are always going to be tough, though. Jesus Lopez of Mexico, he's been running outstanding this year. He's going to be hard to beat.
Fine, but okay.
But yeah, I agree. Correa is the only big name.
Heat 2, you got Clayton Murphy. I mean, some guys have run fast this year, Marco Arop and stuff, but Sir Michael Ceruni's in there, who hasn't super run that fast this year, but has in the past. I think that's a great draw for Murphy. It's not like Heat 3, which I think is the toughest heat, because you have Nigel Amos and Ferguson Rotich, who are very credentialed. Rotich ran the super fast heat today, round 1. He had the 143. But I think, and so Isaiah Jewett is in this heat. I think this works out perfectly for him. Those guys like to run fast. He likes the front lead. They're in the third heat. It's probably going to be the fastest heat. I think it's set up perfectly for him to maybe try to get in the final on time. So I don't think the Americans could have asked for anything better. The question, so Murphy, but there's no room for error now for Murphy and Hoppel, because I assume those heats probably won't go as fast as heat number 3. They have to be in the top 2 to make the final. The 800 semis are the most brutal thing in track and field, the non-finals. So I don't know. It's one of my favorite events because there's drama in a semi. Everything else, pretty much, the top guys make it, or the sprints, you're time trialing, you're going to make it if you're good. The 800 semis, tactics, time, all come together.
Yeah, well, actually, we didn't talk about the RJ Wilson thing at all when we discussed the 800. We said at the very top she didn't make the final. I mean, to me, that was a show of it. Again, in 2016, she was third in her semifinal, even though I think she was definitely worthy of making the final. She was behind 2 DSD women, didn't push the pace. She didn't push the pace in this race again either. And we asked her, it's clearly something is up with RJ Wilson this year. She admitted that it's been a tough year going into the Olympic trials, and she never elaborated. We asked her again today in the mix zone, and she just chose not to talk about it. That's her prerogative.
Look, Rojo rant. This is the Rojo rant.
Oh, no.
John thinks that she doesn't owe us an obligation. Damn right you do, LJ. You owe us an obligation. She's been saying at the U.S. trials, I don't have to tell you what's going on. Then yes, you do. You're trying to market. How are we supposed to be fans of the sport if we don't get to know what's going on? If you're injured, tell us. What are you trying to hide? If it's some personal situation, say it's a personal thing. That's fine. But don't just hint that something's going on and then keep hinting at it and then not tell us. I think it's total bullshit, and it pisses me off. I think as a fan.
Yeah. So what did she say afterwards?
She refused to talk about it to John. I wasn't there.
I asked her, and she said basically she's going to keep it private, and that she didn't want to discuss it.
Better injury.
No, she didn't say. No, she said she was healthy going into the Olympics. And my sense is, if it was some sort of injury early in the season, she would have just said it was an injury. It sounds like it's something different. It's certainly not something she wants to talk about. And I think that's her right as an athlete. She could just say, yes. Would it be better if she said it's a personal issue? I'd rather not go into it. Yes. But she doesn't need to elaborate. I think if she doesn't want to talk about it.
No, you implied to me, USA's, it was an injury. I think we have a right to know this stuff.
John, you have no right to no. You can wish that she would say something. I think, John, what was the question you posed? Like your build up didn't go wide. You want to elaborate that? And she said no. Was that how you posed it to her?
Yes, essentially, she said that going into the trials, that her build up, that she had been dealing with some issues, and could you elaborate what specifically have you been dealing with? And she wouldn't elaborate.
Okay, enough Ajay talk. She's done. I want to talk more about this men's race. Y'all think that this is perfectly set up for the Americans? I think it's perfectly set up for my boy Nigel Amos. I had a lengthy talk with him. I've published my talk with him as a separate article. I just feel like someone who's run 2 of the fastest 15 times in history deserves to have a global gold next to his name. And I'm not confident in his tactics to get the job done. But he wants a fast final. He admits it. He's going to get the fast sim because Jewett's going to take it out. So that's perfect for him. But this is a tough heat because the first heat and the second heat have 2 people that have run 143 this year. The last heat has 4 people that have done it. 3 that have won 143, 1 that's run 142. So that heat is stacked.
Okay. It may be, but I can't believe you're just this dismissive of Ajay. Her career has been so fabulous. She had the DSD woman. She has only 1 medal? Is that right?
2 medals. She got
2 medals.
17 and 19.
Even during this era.
Never has made an Olympic final now. I just think it's just unfortunate. Her greatness won't be recognized by so many people.
Before people say I hate Ajay and whatever, Weldon started a nice thread and said like an Ajay Wilson appreciation thread. She too deserves some more than she's gotten. A lot more. She's been fantastic. And she's understated. I like that. You don't need to be some Usain Bolt charismatic like media hog. But I just feel like I want to root for you, Ajay. Tell us. In this day and age, we want to have sympathy for people. People like the more you share, the more we're going to love you. Whether it's Simone Biles or whoever it is.
Oh my God, he still can't pronounce her name right. I don't understand this. She's only one of the most famous athletes on the entire earth. But Simone Robert. No, Ajay Wilson. Yeah, Weldon's totally right. She probably doesn't get the credit that she deserves. I asked her, I after the race, and this was kind of maybe a rude question in retrospect, considering that she didn't make the Olympic final. But I said, do you feel like you missed your window? Because, we now know Athing Mu's here. She looks like she's here to stay. You've got the youngsters like Riki and Keely Hodgkinson in the UK coming up. I mean, Wilson, if she gets back to her previous level, maybe. But I said, do you miss your window? And she's like, well, I don't think I'm washed up. She says she's going to be back next year. If this personal issue or whatever it is she's dealing with, if that goes away, maybe. But I think Athing Mu, it's going to be very hard to knock her off the perch in the U.S., for the next decade.
I mean, Wilson's only 27, but yeah, I feel like this youngster's come up who's just much better than her. Well, look, but she's not too old. She can contend for medals still, if you think about it, if she gets back to her thing.
Look, she's 27. She's got plenty of time. Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price is like 34 and running great. But she wasn't contending for gold with Semenya. She's not going to be contending for gold with Athing Mu. But none of these other women are better than Ajay Wilson at her peak. A peak Ajay Wilson is a 155, 156 runner. Get back to me when these other women start doing that consistently. It was a much harder final to make this year than it was in 2019. In 2019, there was only 5 women in the semis that had 158 PB or better. Today, there were 12. So it's just a harder final to make. I didn't expect her to make it the way she's been running recently. And she didn't. But big picture wise, folks, what is the lesson that will be learned today? It's all about peaking when it matters most. Think about it. Murphy's coming on at USA's and Worlds when he needs to. Hoppel, same thing. Elaine Thompson, 3rd at the Jamaican trials in both the 1 and the 2, and she's on top of the world now. If you're not healthy, look at Dina Asher-Smith. A couple of months ago, she was dominant in the world. Now she's not. She's out of the Olympics and an absolute nothing. So
absolute nothing. That's just
she's an absolute nothing in these Olympic games, John.
She didn't make. She's out of the Olympics. I don't think it's fair to call her an absolute nothing.
In terms, in the black and white world of the Olympics, she's a nothing. She did not make the final in the 100 or the 200. Who would have thought that 2 months ago? You've got to stay healthy. All of these women, whether it's Nakaye, these chronic injuries. Once you're hurt, I could not run for 5 years, go out for a jog, and the same hamstring and Achilles issues that I had back in my 20s, now that I'm in my 40s, comes back. Like, it's very hard. These are fine-tuned machines, and if you don't peak it right, it's incredibly hard to come out on top.
Okay, guys. Well, it's 2 a.m. there. You guys need to get some sleep. We have to wrap this up. People have pointed out the new 100-meter betting odds are up. By the time we do this show tomorrow, we will have a new world's fastest man. And John, you are right. Andre DeGrasse is the favorite, plus 250. Ronnie Baker, plus 275. The bookies still like Trayvon Bromell, plus 300. So those guys, pretty equal, pretty close. Then a drop-off to Akani Simbini and Marcel Jacobs. Fred Curley on there. Yes, and I did call Zarnell Hayes just some random British guy. That was the guy who passed Trayvon Bromell.
Those odds are tempting, Weldon. If you bet $100 on DeGrasse and $100 on Baker and one of those wins, you're guaranteed a profit, right?
Yep.
I feel like I'd be surprised. I mean, Sabine, Marcel Jacobs ran an Italian record, 994. He looked good, but frankly, I'd be very surprised. Well, I think it would be either DeGrasse or Baker. I guess we got to see the semis, but I kind of think it's one of those two.
Kenya's got a guy in the semis. Way to go, Kenya. All right, guys. Until tomorrow, this is us signing off. If you want to listen to our instant reaction shows on demand, join the Supporters Club, letsrun.com/subscribe. Thanks to our Supporters Club members. You join annually, you get one of the softest t-shirts in the business. Sayonara, guys.